What if a single word could change everything you thought you knew about live television and turn an ordinary family into an overnight sensation? The Johnson family from Atlanta, Georgia, never imagined that their appearance on Family Feud would become one of the most talked about moments in game show history. But sometimes life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. It was a humid Tuesday morning in June when Marcus Johnson received the call that would change his family's life. His wife, Patricia, had submitted an application to Family Feud 6 months earlier, almost as a joke during a family barbecue. Now, standing in their modest kitchen in the suburbs of Atlanta, Marcus held the phone with trembling hands as the production assistant confirmed their spot on the show. Patricia screamed so loud that their neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, came running over thinking something terrible had happened. The kids, 15-year-old Jamal and 12-year-old Keisha, rushed downstairs to find their parents dancing in the kitchen, tears streaming down their faces. The weeks leading up to the taping were a whirlwind of preparation. The Johnsons gathered every evening after dinner, practicing with homemade buzzers made from kitchen utensils and random household items. Marcus's brother DeAndre and his wife Shanice would come over with their teenage son Malik to form the complete 5-person team. They watched old episodes religiously, studying patterns and common answers, determined to represent their family with pride and maybe, just maybe, win enough money to help with Jamal's college fund. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this incredible story, do me a huge favor right now. Hit that subscribe button because it really helps us bring you more amazing content like this. And here's the thing, click that hype button too. It's super important because it tells YouTube to share this video with more people who'll love these stories just as much as you do. Drop a comment below telling me what you think so far. Your support means everything. The day of the taping arrived with a blazing California sun. The family had flown out 2 days earlier, staying in a hotel near the studio, barely sleeping from excitement and nerves. Patricia had bought everyone matching outfits, royal blue shirts with khaki pants, wanting them to look coordinated and professional. As they walked into the studio lot, the reality of the moment hit them. This was actually happening. The iconic Family Feud set stood before them, the lights brighter than they imagined, the audience seats filling with people from all walks of life. Steve Harvey entered the stage during rehearsal, his presence commanding yet warm. He walked over to both families, shaking hands and cracking jokes to ease the tension. When he reached Marcus, Steve looked him in the eye and said, "You ready for this, man?" Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Steve smiled, that famous smile that had comforted millions of viewers, and patted him on the shoulder. "Just have fun out there, that's what this is all about." The opposing family, the Hendersons from Portland, Oregon, seemed equally nervous and excited. They were a blended family with a fascinating story of their own, but today they were competitors. As the production crew made final adjustments to lighting and sound, both families stood on opposite sides of the stage, stealing glances at each other, sizing up the competition while maintaining friendly smiles. When the cameras started rolling, the energy in the studio transformed into something electric. The audience applauded as Steve Harvey made his entrance, his burgundy suit impeccable, his charisma filling every corner of the room. He went through his opening remarks with the ease of someone who had done this thousands of times, yet still made it feel fresh and spontaneous. The first round began with Marcus and Robert Henderson, the patriarch of the opposing family, stepping up to the buzzer. Steve read the first question, his voice clear and engaging. "We asked 100 people, name something you might find in a teenager's bedroom that their parents wish wasn't there." Marcus slammed the buzzer first, his reflexes sharp from weeks of practice. "Dirty laundry," he shouted. The board revealed it as the number 2 answer. The Johnsons chose to play, and the round proceeded with answers ranging from video game consoles to half-eaten snacks hidden under beds. They managed to avoid strikes and won the round, taking an early lead. The second round brought Jamal to the front podium, facing off against the Hendersons' teenage daughter, Emma. Steve looked at both teenagers with an amused expression. "All right, young people, let's see what you got. We asked 100 people. Name a reason why someone might be late to work." Jamal buzzed in first. "Traffic," the number 1 answer. The audience erupted in cheers as Jamal pumped his fist and jogged back to his family. The Johnsons were on fire, their chemistry evident, their answers flowing naturally. But game shows are unpredictable, and the Hendersons fought back hard in the third round. They stole points after the Johnsons accumulated 3 strikes on a question about popular pizza toppings. Marcus had confidently said anchovies, thinking it was a clever answer, only to hear the devastating buzz indicating it wasn't on the board. Steve had given him that look, the one that said, "Really, man?" And the audience had laughed good-naturedly. The score tightened, and suddenly the game was anyone's to win. Round 4 became crucial. Patricia stepped up to face Robert Henderson again. The tension was palpable, both families standing rigid behind their respective podiums, hands clasped together in nervous anticipation. Steve looked at both contestants, building the drama with his signature pause. We asked 100 people. Name something people do when they're nervous. Patricia's hand hovered over the buzzer, her mind racing through possibilities. Robert looked equally focused, his jaw set with determination. The buzzer sounded, Patricia's reflexes just a fraction faster. "Bite their nails?" she exclaimed. The board lit up, revealing it as the number 3 answer. The Johnsons chose to play again, needing to capitalize on this opportunity. DeAndre offered sweat, which appeared as number 2. Shanice said pace back and forth, claiming the number 4 spot. Young Malik, showing wisdom beyond his years, suggested talk fast, which rounded out the board at number 5. They had swept the question, and the audience gave them a standing ovation. Going into the final round, fast money, the Johnsons held a commanding lead, but it wasn't insurmountable. The Hendersons would get their chance if they could pull off a miracle. Steve read the final standard round question with dramatic flair. We asked 100 people, name a boy's name that starts with the letter M. The question seemed simple enough, almost too simple. Both families had members named Marcus and Malik, so M names were personal to them. Robert Henderson buzzed in first this time, his competitive fire fully ignited. "Michael," he declared confidently. The number 1 answer, with 32 people having said it. The Hendersons chose to play, needing this round desperately. Emma said Matthew, which appeared at number 4 with 11 responses. Their next family member, Robert's wife Linda, said Mark, securing the number 3 answer with 14 responses. They were building momentum, the audience sensing a potential comeback. But then came the first strike. Robert's elderly father, attempting to think outside the box, suggested Mortimer. The buzz echoed through the studio, and Steve gave him a sympathetic look. "Mortimer? When's the last time you met a young Mortimer, sir?" The audience laughed, but the tension remained thick. Back to Emma, who nervously suggested Mason, which thankfully appeared on the board at number 5 with 8 responses. 1 strike down, 2 answers left to find. Linda stepped up for her second turn, visibly sweating under the bright lights. "Martin," she said, her voice wavering slightly. Another buzz. 2 strikes. The Johnson family huddled together, whispering potential steal answers, preparing for their opportunity. Robert returned to the podium, knowing his family's fate rested on his next answer. He took a deep breath, looked at Steve and said, "Marcus." It was on the board, number 6 with 6 responses. 1 answer remained, and they had 1 strike left. Robert's father stepped up again, determined to redeem himself. The studio fell silent, everyone leaning forward in their seats. Steve repeated the question slowly, letting the pressure build. "Give me a boy's name that starts with M." The old man's face showed intense concentration, decades of life experience seemingly channeling into this single moment. He opened his mouth to speak and then said with complete confidence, "Marijuana." The studio froze. For a split second, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Steve Harvey's face went through a journey of emotions that would later be replayed millions of times online. His eyes widened, his mouth fell open, and he slowly turned to look directly into the camera with an expression of pure disbelief. The audience remained silent, unsure if they had heard correctly. Patricia Johnson covered her mouth with both hands. Marcus looked at DeAndre, both men's eyes huge with shock. Steve finally found his voice, though it came out higher than usual. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" The old man, seemingly oblivious to the chaos he had just created, repeated cheerfully, "Marijuana." You know, like the plant. I knew a boy in school, everyone called him that. Steve removed his glasses, pinched the bridge of his nose, and looked up at the ceiling as if asking for divine intervention. The audience began to realize what had happened, and nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "Sir," Steve began, his voice a mixture of amusement and exasperation, "marijuana is not a boy's name. That's—" He paused, searching for words that wouldn't violate broadcast standards. "That's a plant, sir. An illegal plant in most places. You cannot name your child marijuana." The old man looked genuinely confused, insisting he remembered someone with that name from his youth. Steve turned to the camera again, his expression now a meme in the making, and simply shook his head. The buzzer sounded for the third strike, and the Johnsons had their chance to steal. They huddled quickly, and Marcus approached the podium with their collective answer. The final name on the board needed to be revealed. Steve composed himself, still occasionally glancing at the Henderson grandfather with bewilderment. "All right, Johnson family, give me a boy's name that starts with M for the win." Marcus smiled and said clearly, "Mitchell." The board revealed the number 2 answer with 18 responses, and the studio exploded with celebration. The Johnson family rushed to center stage, jumping and hugging each other as confetti cannons erupted around them. Steve Harvey stood to the side, still processing what had just happened, occasionally laughing and shaking his head. The Hendersons were gracious in defeat, applauding the winners, though the grandfather still seemed confused about why his answer had caused such a reaction. Patricia was crying happy tears, mascara running down her cheeks as she held her children close. This moment, this incredible, surreal moment, was everything they had dreamed of and more. But the game wasn't over yet. The Johnsons still had to face fast money to claim the grand prize of $20,000. Steve explained the rules as Marcus and DeAndre prepared to take their turns, with Marcus going first while DeAndre waited backstage with noise-canceling headphones. The pressure was immense, but Marcus felt surprisingly calm. After what had just happened with the marijuana answer, everything else seemed manageable by comparison. Steve positioned himself next to Marcus, cards in hand, ready to fire off 5 questions in rapid succession. "All right, Marcus, 20 seconds on the clock, here we go. Name a place where people go to relax." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Beach." Steve nodded and moved on. "Name something you might buy at a hardware store." Marcus replied quickly, "Hammer." The questions continued in rapid fire. "Name a reason you might cancel a date." Marcus said, "Sick." Then, "Name something people put on their pancakes." Marcus answered, "Syrup." Finally, "Name an animal you might see at the zoo." Marcus finished with, "Lion." The answers were revealed one by one, each ding of the board adding points to their total. Beach scored 23 points, a solid start. Hammer brought in 15 points, respectable for such a specific category. Sick earned them 31 points, the number 1 answer. Syrup dominated with 52 points, and Lion added another 19. Marcus had accumulated 140 points, a strong performance that gave DeAndre a reasonable target. They needed 200 points total to win the $20,000. DeAndre emerged from backstage, removing the headphones, his face showing determination mixed with anxiety. Steve greeted him warmly, explaining that Marcus had scored 140 points and they needed 60 more to win. DeAndre nodded, rolling his shoulders to release tension. His family watched from the side of the stage, Patricia gripping Jamal's hand so tightly he had to gently pry her fingers loose. Shanice whispered a prayer under her breath, her eyes closed, lips moving silently. The clock started, and Steve launched into the same 5 questions. Name a place where people go to relax. DeAndre said, "Spa." Different from Marcus's answer, which was good. Name something you might buy at a hardware store. DeAndre answered, "Nails." Again, different from Hammer. Name a reason you might cancel a date. DeAndre replied, "Emergency," which would likely overlap with sick but might score separately. Name something people put on their pancakes. DeAndre said, "Butter," avoiding the syrup answer. Name an animal you might see at the zoo. DeAndre finished with, "Elephant." The reveal began, and the tension in the studio reached its peak. Spa scored 18 points, the number 2 answer. The family cheered, knowing every point counted. Nails brought in 23 points, An excellent response. Emergency scored 2 points, as it was grouped differently from sick but still counted. Butter earned 11 points, a solid alternative to syrup. They were close now, so close. The final answer, elephant, needed to bring in at least 6 points for them to win. Steve drew out the moment as he always did, building the suspense until it was almost unbearable. The board revealed elephant had scored 13 points. The total flashed on the screen, 207 points. The Johnsons had won. The studio erupted into chaos as the family mobbed DeAndre, everyone screaming and crying and laughing simultaneously. Steve Harvey joined the celebration, hugging each family member, genuinely happy for their victory. $20,000 would change their lives, helping with college tuition, home repairs, and providing a financial cushion they had never had before. As the confetti settled and the cameras stopped rolling, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. The production crew congratulated them, several crew members mentioning that the marijuana moment would definitely make the highlight reels. Steve Harvey pulled Marcus aside during a break and said, "Man, in all my years hosting this show, I have never heard anything like that. Your family is going to be famous for this." Marcus laughed, still somewhat in shock, wondering if the old man from the Henderson family had any idea what he had unleashed. The taping wrapped up and both families were ushered to a green room where they could decompress and complete paperwork. The Hendersons were incredibly kind, with Robert shaking Marcus's hand firmly and saying, "You guys deserved it. You played a great game." The grandfather, still blissfully unaware of his viral moment to come, chatted happily with Patricia about his childhood memories, including more stories about the mysterious boy allegedly named Marijuana. Patricia nodded politely, exchanging amused glances with Marcus over the old man's shoulder. The flight back to Atlanta felt surreal. The family kept replaying every moment, laughing about the marijuana answer until their sides hurt. Jamal had already started checking social media, though the episode wouldn't air for another 6 weeks. Keisha fell asleep against her mother's shoulder, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the day. Marcus held Patricia's hand, both of them staring out the airplane window at the clouds below, contemplating how a simple game show appearance had become one of the most memorable experiences of their lives. 6 weeks later, on a Thursday evening, the Johnson family gathered in their living room with extended family and friends to watch their episode air. Mrs. Henderson from next door came over with homemade cookies. DeAndre and Shanice arrived with Malik, everyone squeezing onto couches and chairs, plates of food balanced on laps. The energy was festive, almost like a Super Bowl party, everyone excited to see the Johnsons on national television. When the marijuana moment happened on screen, the room exploded with laughter. People were literally rolling on the floor, tears streaming down faces, some laughing so hard, no sound came out. Steve Harvey's reaction was even better than they remembered, his face a masterpiece of comedic timing and genuine shock. Marcus's phone started buzzing immediately, text messages and calls flooding in from people across the country who were watching. Social media erupted within minutes, the clip being shared thousands of times before the episode even finished airing. By the next morning, the moment had gone viral. The video clip had been viewed millions of times across various platforms. Memes flooded the internet, with Steve Harvey's shocked face becoming an instant classic reaction image. News outlets picked up the story. Entertainment websites wrote articles with headlines like, "Family Feud's most unbelievable answer ever," and "Steve Harvey can't believe what he hears." The Johnson family woke up to find themselves at the center of a cultural moment, their phones ringing constantly with interview requests and messages from friends they hadn't heard from in years. Marcus had to take a day off work because the attention was so overwhelming. His co-workers had already seen the clip, and when he finally returned to the office, they had decorated his cubicle with fake marijuana leaves made from green construction paper and signs that read, "Name that starts with M Champion." He took it all in good humor, understanding that this was his life now, at least for a while. Patricia's book club friends threw her an impromptu celebration, everyone wanting to hear behind-the-scenes stories and get the full experience of what it was like to be on the show. The kids handled the attention differently. Jamal loved it, his social media followers skyrocketing overnight, his status at school elevated to minor celebrity. He gave interviews to the school newspaper and local news stations, always gracious and funny, clearly having inherited some of his parents' charm. Keisha was more reserved, uncomfortable with strangers recognizing her family in public, but she appreciated how the prize money would help secure her brother's college education and eventually her own. 3 months after the episode aired, the Johnsons received an unexpected invitation. Family Feud wanted them to return for a special Viral Moments tournament, where families whose episodes had become internet sensations would compete against each other. The prize was $50,000, and Steve Harvey personally called Marcus to encourage them to participate. "You guys were television gold," Steve said on the phone, his voice warm and genuine. "Come back and let's make some more magic happen." The family debated the decision over dinner one evening. Part of them wanted to quit while they were ahead, to preserve the perfect memory of their first appearance. But another part, the adventurous part that had applied to the show in the first place, wanted to experience it all again. Jamal argued passionately for returning, pointing out that $50,000 could fund his entire college education. Keisha surprisingly agreed, saying that if they were already famous for the marijuana moment, they might as well embrace it fully. They accepted the invitation, and 3 months later found themselves back in California, walking onto the familiar Family Feud set. This time felt different. They were veterans now, comfortable with the cameras and the lights, and the pressure. Steve Harvey greeted them like old friends, joking about making sure nobody suggested any illegal substances as names this time. The opposing family, the Rodriguez family from Miami, whose viral moment involved an answer about sexy vegetables, were equally excited and nervous. The tournament game was intense, both families playing at an incredibly high level. The Johnsons had learned from their first experience, their timing sharper, their answers more strategic. Marcus and Patricia worked together like a well-oiled machine, anticipating each other's thoughts and covering each other's weaknesses. DeAndre brought energy and creativity to every answer, while Shanice provided steady, reliable responses that consistently appeared on the board. Malik, now more confident than during their first appearance, delivered clutch answers at critical moments. The game came down to fast money again, and this time Patricia and Shanice took on the challenge. Patricia went first, her answers quick and confident, scoring 162 points. Shanice needed only 38 points to win, a very achievable target. The questions came rapid fire, and Shanice answered with calm precision, her voice steady despite the enormous pressure. When the final score was revealed, they had accumulated 219 points, well over the required 200. The celebration was even sweeter the second time. $50,000 would transform their financial situation, providing security and opportunities they had only dreamed about. Steve Harvey presented them with the oversized check, cameras flashing, audience cheering, the moment preserved forever in digital immortality. As they posed for photos, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had started with a simple application filled out during a family barbecue. Life had a funny way of surprising you, he thought, when you were brave enough to take a chance. Hey, my friends. Help me by subscribing to the channel so we can reach 1,000 subscribers. Even if you're watching from your TV or computer, your subscription makes all the difference, and the algorithm will help you see more amazing stories. Leave a like or an emoji in the comments and be part of this growth. The Johnson family returned to Atlanta as champions, their story complete, but their lives forever changed. The prize money was invested wisely, with the majority going into college funds for Jamal and Keisha, some set aside for home improvements, and a portion donated to their church's youth program. They framed both oversized checks and hung them in their living room, constant reminders that sometimes the most extraordinary moments come from simply saying yes to an opportunity and being authentically yourself, even when the whole world is watching.